Okay, so get this right. Someone actually sent me this YouTube video. And it's basically just like this guy and his whole take on, you know, what women want,
Right.
like capital W, like full on secrets revealed, advice for men, the whole 9 yards. I was like, we got to deep dive into this.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Full disclosure, we're approaching this with, you know, a hefty dose of curiosity. I'm not taking this as gospel by any means, but it did get me thinking. Even if it's exaggerated, right? Is there like a kernel of truth in here somewhere? What can we learn, even from a video that feels like, honestly, it's a little stuck in a time warp?
Right. Even a single perspective, however, exaggerated it might be,
Yeah.
it can be kind of a window. It's a window into broader beliefs about like dating and relationships.
Totally.
We might not agree with everything, but that's okay. Like
Yeah.
that's where the interesting conversations start, right?
Exactly. That's what we're here for. So one thing that jumped out immediately to me was this whole knight in shining armor theme.
Mm-hmm.
This guy,
Mm-hmm.
he is all about men needing to be protectors,
Mhm.
decision makers. You name it. That's what a man's got to do. Opening doors, walking on the outside of the sidewalk.
Mm.
Like you'd think we're all about to faint at the first sign of like stiff breeze. It's a little much, don't you think?
It can be, yeah.
But like I can't help but wonder, why do these tropes stick around?
Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it? A lot of these ideas, they often have like deep roots in traditional gender roles, obviously, which, for centuries, we've linked masculinity with things like providing safety and security. Right.
And
While we've obviously like evolved right
Yeah.
beyond those rigid roles,
For sure.
those deep-seated associations, they can linger in, subtle ways.
it's true. And it's interesting because it's like nobody really needs someone to slay a dragon for them these days.
Yeah.
But maybe those gestures, right? Even if they seem a little outdated,
Yeah.
maybe they tap into this deeper desire,
Yeah.
like a deeper desire to feel cared for,
Mm-hmm.
to feel protected, maybe even a little bit cherished. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's often less about the like literal act
Right.
and more about, what it symbolizes within the context of a relationship.
I like that.
It's about creating a dynamic where someone feels seen, where someone feels appreciated, and yes, even a little bit cherished.
It's so true. It's like that old saying, it's the thought that counts.
Mhm. Maybe sometimes, even if the execution is a little clumsy, like the effort itself is it communicates something meaningful.
Absolutely. It goes back to intentionality in relationships, right?
Yeah.
And this is actually something I think this video gets right.
Even if it's, buried under layers of other stuff, it repeatedly emphasizes the importance of listening, like really listening and understanding.
That's true. You're right. He does talk about that. He's all about noticing the little things, paying attention to what she needs. Which, okay, stripped of the whole men are from Mars, women are from Venus framing, is actually pretty solid advice.
It is, yeah. It speaks to a universal truth about relationships. We all want to feel heard.
Of course.
We all want to feel understood. And that comes from actively listening, picking up on those cues, and
Yeah.
responding, right? Responding to your partner's needs and to their communication style.
It's about being present, being attuned to the other person, and recognizing that. Sometimes, honestly, the most meaningful gestures are the ones that really show you've been paying attention.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond assumptions and really taking the time to really see and hear the person that you're with.
Okay, so we've got chivalry, we've got listening. Are you ready for this one? This guy claims women love a challenge. Like, they don't want things to be easy.
Ugh.
Part of me wants to, like, laugh out loud, but then again, I've definitely had my fair share of dating situations where playing it too cool totally backfired.
Yeah.
So, like, what's the deal with this challenge idea? How does that actually play out in, in healthy relationships?
Ah, yes. The challenge paradox.
There it is.
It's tricky. It's tricky because it's often misinterpreted, right? It's misinterpreted as like playing games or just being intentionally difficult.
Right.
But when you look a little deeper,
Yeah.
there's a kernel of truth there. But it's about growth, not gamesmanship.
You know what I'm realizing? This whole challenge thing, right? It kind of ties back to listening, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Like, you can't really challenge someone in a healthy way, I don't think, unless you, like, genuinely understand their goals, their fears, like what makes them tick.
That's such a good point, because it's about being like really attentive to the nuances of your partner's personality and like their aspirations and dreams and all that.
Totally.
It's about recognizing that growth like often happens outside of those comfort zones.
All right.
And, sometimes we need a little nudge, right?
Yeah.
Or even, a loving push to kind of get there.
And who better to like give us that push
Yeah.
than someone who, knows us really well.
Yeah.
And like, it genuinely wants the best for us. Okay, I'm starting to see the light here with this challenge thing. But before we get too carried away with all this like self-improvement talk, let's move on to something a little more, a little more tangible. This video also stresses the importance of thoughtfulness. Like thoughtfulness over materialism, which honestly, like that's a breath of fresh air these days.
It really is.
He talks about how gifts, they should be meaningful.
Right.
They don't necessarily have to be expensive.
Right.
Like it's about quality over quantity, I guess.
It's a good reminder that genuine gestures, they often speak louder, right? Louder than any, grand pronouncements or, extravagant gifts.
Right, for sure.
It's about, again, paying attention to the details, to the things that, light up your partner's face, that show you've truly, like, seen and heard them.
Oh, totally. Like, it reminds me of this one time I was dating this person, and they knew I was, like, obsessed with antique books.
Okay.
Like, completely obsessed. And for my birthday one year, they surprised me. And they got me, like, a first edition of a book by my favorite author.
Oh.
And it wasn't flashy or anything. It wasn't, like, crazy expensive or anything. But it meant the world to me. Because it showed me, like, they were paying attention.
Yes. And that's precisely the point, a thoughtful gift. It's carefully chosen, and it becomes a symbol, right? A symbol of the care and attention you put into the relationship.
100%.
It's about, like, speaking your partner's love language, right?
Yes.
Whether that's through, acts of service, words of affirmation,
Sure.
quality time, or, yes, even gifts. It's about making the effort. Making the effort to understand what really resonates with the other person, what makes them feel, valued and appreciated. Which, if you think about it, that's a pretty valuable lesson. And not just for romantic relationships either.
Absolutely.
But for anyone, right?
Yeah, totally.
Friends, family, whoever.
Whether it's your partner,
Huh?
a friend, a family member, or even a colleague, right? Like taking the time to understand what matters to them,
Yeah.
to show up, in a way that resonates with their values and preferences.
Yeah.
That's the foundation. Like that's the foundation of strong and meaningful connections.
It's about like moving beyond, those generic gestures, really tapping into what makes each relationship unique and special. But what's interesting to me about this whole thing?
What's that?
Well, this video talks a big game, right?
Mhm.
About like understanding women, decoding women.
Yeah.
There's one like glaring omission, I think, in all this advice giving.
What's that?
Authenticity.
Ooh.
Like he doesn't even mention it. Interesting.
It's all about what men should do,
Yeah.
right, to attract women.
Yeah.
But it never really addresses the importance of being genuine, of like showing up as your true self. So it's not enough to just like go through the motions. Like pick off these boxes on checklist of like desirable traits. You're saying it has to, has to come from a genuine place.
Exactly. Like imagine someone, right, trying to apply all these like tips and tricks, but not actually like embodying the qualities behind them. It becomes a performance then, right? Totally not a connection. And people can spot a fake a mile away.
Well, 100%.
Okay.
It's like that saying, right? You could lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You can't like go through all the motions, but you can't force like genuine attraction or connection, really, if it's not coming from, a place of authenticity.
100%. And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, how
right?
so?
Because true attraction, it isn't about like mastering a set of techniques
Yes.
or like conforming to some, external ideal.
Yeah. It's about being comfortable.
Yeah.
Like being comfortable in your own skin, owning, your strengths,
Yeah.
owning your weaknesses, and allowing yourself
Yeah.
to be vulnerable enough to like let someone truly see you.
That's such a good point, because it's so true. It's about like recognizing that, true connection, real connection, where it happens when we're like brave enough to be ourselves.
Yeah.
Quirks and all. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't like put in any effort, right?
Yeah.
It's about finding that sweet spot between being authentic, but also being intentional Intentional about how we show up in our relationships.
Yes, 100%. It's about, you know, putting your best foot forward, but not a foot that's like 3 sizes too small, right?
Yeah.
Because you're trying to squeeze into, you know,
Yeah.
someone else's idea
Yeah.
of who you should be.
It's about finding someone who, appreciates you for you, not for, like, the
Yeah.
carefully curated version of yourself, right? The one
Yes.
you present to the world.
Yes, exactly.
The Instagram version of yourself. And that, my friend, is a recipe, right?
Yeah.
It's a recipe for a genuine, fulfilling, and lasting connection.
I love that. And that, my friends, I think, is a perfect note to end on. Who knew that? Like a deep dive into one. Very opinionated YouTubers, like dating advice could lead to. So surprisingly insightful, I think, like reflections on communication, authenticity, you know, the nuances of human connection.
It just goes to show you, sometimes, right, the most unexpected sources
Yeah.
can spark,
Yeah.
the most engaging conversations.
100%. We covered everything.
Yeah.
From like sidewalk etiquette to like toilet seat diplomacy. Like
We did it all.
we did it all with like a healthy dose of skepticism, I think, and a dash of, real world experience thrown in there for good measure.
Of course.
Because let's face it, relationships, they're messy, they're complicated, and they're full of surprises. There's no like one size fits all guidebook. There's no like magic formula for, guaranteed happiness.
Nope, definitely not.
But like, that's the beauty of it.
It is. It's about, like, embracing the journey, learning as you go, and finding someone, honestly, who's willing to do the same. And, like, who knows, maybe even this YouTube guru, with all of his, like, outlandish advice, maybe he stumbled upon, like, a few universal truths along the way.
Maybe so.
As always, though, we want to hear from you what resonated with you from today's deep dive. Head over to our social media pages and share your thoughts. We love hearing from you. Until next time, keep those brains engaged, those hearts open. And remember,
Sometimes, even the most like out there sources can lead to surprisingly insightful discoveries.